Welcome to Khanversations. I am Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about Dr. Jaishanker's visit to China. This was as part of the SCO's foreign ministers meeting. This is in preparation for probably next month's summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. China will be taking over as president of SCO for this 1 year, and there is I think, high likelihood that Prime Minister Modi will be traveling to China to meet with Xi Jinping and others. But whether that happens or not is another matter. But Dr. Jaishankar was in Beijing after 5 years. This is after 5 years that the Indian Foreign Minister was traveling to Beijing. This is a neighboring giant. So this is both a measure of what had happened to India-China relations, but also a measure of the improvement that is possibly taking place between India-China relations. So I'm going to talk about Dr. Jaishankar's visit, what happened, what didn't happen, what is significant, what exposes Indian vulnerabilities towards China. And I will also ask a couple of serious questions about Indian foreign policy, which seems to be in a state of confusion. India is bouncing from one superpower to another. Sometimes it appears that India is trying its best to hang on with the United States at the expense of China, talking tough to China while being servile and bending the knee to the US. And now that Donald Trump has basically distanced himself from India, or has he? That's another question. Is India now turning back towards China, realizing that maybe they cannot rely on Donald Trump, and so it might be in India's interest not to enrage the superpower that is right next door. So we will talk all about these issues. But before that, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. The key questions that I really want to raise is, how come just a couple of months after Operation Sindoor, in which China made it very, very clear where it stands, and where it stands is with Pakistan and against India. It was an interesting revelation of the foreign policy achievements of the two countries. India for the last 4 or 5 years was basically hanging out with the US and US allies, with the Quad, summit after summit, tons of meetings in Washington, D.C., Narendra Modi addressing the joint session of the US Parliament, being invited to the White House, and it appeared as if India and the United States were the closest of allies. And then on the issue of Gaza, even though India continues to say that it is the leader and the voice of the global South, it basically does whatever the US and Israelis do, votes repeatedly against Gaza in the United Nations and continues to protect Israel. So it appears that India was in the Western camp, and then now suddenly we see as if there is a train now from Delhi to Beijing. After the Modi-Xi Jinping meeting in Kazan in October of 2024, Ajit Doval has traveled to China twice. And then Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, traveled last month, and now Dr. Jaishankar, after 5 years, goes to China. So apparently all paths from Delhi lead to Beijing these days. 3 of the top leaders have headed to China in the past few months. And all of this after at least both Rajnath Singh and Dr. Jaishankar have traveled to Beijing after Operation Sindoor, in which not only did China provide weapons to Pakistan, but provide real-time intelligence and provided all kinds of diplomatic support to Pakistan, to the extent that when the SCO defense ministers got together, the SCO's statement simply did not refer to Pahalgam and the attack on India, whereas it did mention the Jafar Express. So it was very clear that China was manipulating the SCO statement, and India did not sign it, and thereby the statement was not finalized, but India basically leaked the contents of that statement, which basically shows once again that China was standing so close with Pakistan during Operation Sindoor and after that. So now the question is, has India forgotten all of that and is heading back? Dr. Jaishanker says things are beginning to normalize, things are moving, relations are getting better. It reminds us of those days of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. So it is quite surprising as to how the entire dialogue is taking place as if Operation Sindoor A did not happen, and China's role in that remains undiscussed in many ways. Dr. Jaishankar did try to to push the India Pahalgam story, that India has suffered from cross-border terrorism, and India is now going to adopt a zero tolerance policy towards terrorism. And since SCO's whole purpose was to combat extremism, separatism, and terrorism, it is important that SCO take a very strong stance against terrorism. SCO did take a very strong stance against Jafar Express, but India did not participate. Plus, India has been playing a spoiler with SCO, as you know, when SCO tried to issue a statement condemning Israeli and US attacks on Iran, which is a member of SCO. India betrayed its own member of SCO and stood with Israel and refused to endorse that statement. So this India's attitude that, oh, we will do whatever is in our interest and we will not care for other countries' interests. We don't care about Iran. Israel matters to us, so we will scuttle the SCO statement. And this so-called policy of strategic autonomy now seems to be backfiring since Operation Sindoor, when no country stood with India. At least 3 countries stood with Pakistan, that is China, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, and nobody stood with India. There were condemnations of terrorism, but none condemned Pakistan. And subsequently, Pakistan has become very popular, including to the point that Pakistan's General Asim Munir, now Field Marshal, was invited to have lunch with President Donald Trump. So let's look at what happened in Beijing. 2 things happened in Beijing. One was that it was the SCO foreign ministers meeting. And number 2, there were a lot of bilaterals between India and China. The bilaterals that Dr. Jaishankar had was that he got to meet Han Zheng, the vice president of China, Wang Yi, who is a member of the Politburo as well as the foreign minister. He did also meet Xi Jinping, but that meeting was collectively, all the foreign ministers of SCO who were visiting got a chance to meet with Xi Jinping. So the discussions that really happened were with Han Zheng and primarily with Wang Yi. And there Dr. Jaishankar basically said that he was happy that disengagement had happened at the border where there are friction points, but he called for de-escalation, which means that the border issue, they are still heavily armed. I think every time India calls for de-escalation on the border, I think it is code for India trying to tell the Chinese to evacuate the land, the Indian territory that they have occupied since April of 2020. I think the Chinese have, there are lots of people who have made this argument that Chinese have taken territory in April 2022. The Indian government, just as it does not talk about how many jets or how many Rafale it lost during Operation Sindoor, is reluctant to talk about what happened to India. In a way, it is being unfair to the Indian population by not sharing with them intelligence about how much territory was lost to China in April of 2020. Nevertheless, every time Dr. Jaishankar or Prime Minister Modi uses the word de-escalation on the border, please understand that what they are trying to say is, please give back our land. And then, of course, this is something that is being celebrated in the Indian media. Dr. Jaishankar said that relations cannot become fully normalized unless there are trade restrictions are removed. And this is his reference to China using limits on rare earth minerals and fertilizer exports to India. But I found it very interesting. If India is opposed to trade restrictions, then why does India continue to block TikTok? Why is India banning BYD, the EV car manufacturer, from expanding its manufacturing in India? BYD wants to invest $1 billion in India, but India is blocking that. India also blocked Huawei from the 5G trials in India. So India is trying its best to block China's electric vehicles, China's communication technology, China's social media, TikTok. These are all trade restrictions. And yet India wants China to give up trade restrictions. I found this interesting that this thing is not being debated so much because the oxygen is being sucked by the Dalai Lama succession story. The Chinese uh, say that according to past history and tradition, it is the Chinese government which has the authority to decide who the next incarnation of the Dalai Lama will be. The current Dalai Lama in India wants to choose, and India has subtly tried to align itself with Dalai Lama. It can create a lot of mess. You might end up with two Dalai Lamas, one in Dharamshala and one in Tibet. And this could basically make India-China relations worse off. There are some experts, both in India and overseas, who think that the Dalai Lama's succession, if India really politicizes it, then it could actually lead to maybe even a skirmish between India and China. Uh, but uh, uh, India did welcome China's presidency at SCO and is supporting it in the hope that China will support India's presidency with BRICS next year. But India has, in my opinion, basically sabotaged SCO. When India was president of SCO or chairman of SCO in 2023, it did not even have a proper conference. It made it virtual. And then it has been consistently voting against the members of SCO in support of its masters in the West, US, and Israel. And so by now, I am sure that most members of SCO must be wondering whether India is as India's presence in SCO, does it strengthen SCO or does it weaken SCO? But coming to the overall shift in India, the way Dr. Jaishanker was pretending as his relations with China are suddenly getting better and not talking about Operation Sindoor, which happened 2 months ago. When they talk about India, they talk about 1971. The memory seems to be very fresh about U.S. role in 1971 when we talk about India-U.S. relations. But now, when we talk about India-China relations, we seem to have forgotten China's role in Operation Sindoor. I think what has happened is that in the past 4 or 5 years, because of Biden's efforts to basically soft pedal his disagreements with India and to very aggressively seek a strategic partnership with India, India got carried away and started acting tough with China, basically betting on its strategic relationship with the US. So we are aligned with the most powerful country in the world. We are US. I mean, this is a perception now in India that the US needs India, and therefore India can, act tough with China, and basically saying that there can be no normalization in relations unless in trade, etc., unless there's normalization on the border. There's no de-escalation in the border. Dr. Jaishankar is still calling for de-escalation on the border, but trade has been fully normalized. India has the biggest trade deficit with China right now at $85 billion in 2024. But what has changed globally is Donald Trump's approach to India. Every other day, we hear a new threat from Donald Trump to impose massive tariffs on India and China because they're buying Russian oil. For example, there is a new bill in the Senate pushed by conservatives. Indians think that conservatives like India, but it is a conservative senator, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, who's pushing a bill which will actually give Donald Trump the capacity to impose 500% tariffs And then just 2 days ago, Donald Trump, while talking about Ukraine, uh, threatened to impose 25% tariffs on those who buy Russian oil, meaning India and China. So, and the difficulty that India is having in finalizing the bilateral trade agreement with the US uh, uh, has perhaps made India a bit more nervous about how reliable the United States is as a strategic partner, especially when Donald Trump is the president. In addition to that, India has tried to, keep in all relations with Pakistan as bilateral, but the repeated nearly 20 times now, Donald Trump has said that it was he who brought about the ceasefire between India and Pakistan by mediation, by using trade as an instrument to pressure both India and Pakistan to have a ceasefire. So basically, busting India's decades long policy of keeping India Pakistan relations bilateral and keeping others out of it. So on these two particular issues, things have become a bit sour, I think, between India, and India feels that it cannot fully rely on the US. And if it cannot fully rely on the US, then it cannot be fully tough on China. China is an economy that is 6 times nearly bigger, 5 times bigger than India, and without the help of the US, India cannot stand up to China. So meanwhile, China's Belt and Road Initiative is encircling India. Pakistan is in China's pocket. Bangladesh is in China's pocket. Nepal is in China's pocket. So most of South Asia, the so-called Indian subcontinent, has now become the Chinese subcontinent. So given all these difficulties that India is facing, the question that we really need to ask is India reconciling with China in spite of what happened in Galwan and in spite of what happened in Operation Sindoor, a weakening of Indian foreign policy? And finally, the big question that not many people are asking, is China containing India? Is China trying its best to make sure that India does not develop economically and diplomatically? Will China block India's membership in the Security Council by using its veto? Will China prevent India's manufacturing sector from developing by putting some restrictions on its engineers? Apparently, China has ordered all engineers that work with Foxconn on India's Apple subsidiary or the Apple assembly plant in India to go back to China. So there are hints and suggestions that China is trying to ensure that the rate at which India is developing economically is contained. So if there are so many problems with China, why is Dr. Jaishanker pretending as if things are getting better? It's only the Indians who are going to China. Doval went twice, Rajnath Singh went there, and so did Dr. Jaishankar. And it was quite possible that in a couple of months or in August, whenever the SEO summit is, I think it is on the 31st of August, uh, you will probably see Prime Minister Modi right there hugging Dr. Xi Jinping. So anyway, so these are my thoughts on Dr. Jaishankar's visit to China. Uh, so I hope you found it interesting. So share this video with your socio-political network, like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching Conversation. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.